hol/hollow, meaning whole, comes from the Greek word holos, with the same meaning. The root can be found in Catholic. When capitalized, Catholic refers to the worldwide Christian church based in Rome, which was once the whole, that is, the only, Christian church. Without the capital letter, Catholic means simply universal or, when describing a person, broad in one's interests or tastes. Holistic, relating to or concerned with wholes or with complete systems rather than with the analysis of, treatment of, or dissection into parts. Environmental scientists tend to be holistic in their views, even when they're only studying a tiny patch of ground. The whole is greater than the sum of its parts expresses the essence of holism, a term coined by the great South African general and statesman Jan Smuts in 1926. Holism generally opposes the Western tendency toward analysis, the breaking down of wholes into parts, sometimes to the point that you can't see the forest for the trees. Holism is an important concept in the sciences and social sciences, and especially in medicine. Holistic medicine tries to treat the whole person rather than focusing too narrowly on single symptoms. It emphasizes the connections between the mind and the body, avoids the overuse of drugs, and has borrowed such practices from Eastern traditions as acupuncture and yoga. Hologram: a three-dimensional image reproduced from a pattern of interference produced by a beam of radiation, such as a laser. When holograms are used for data storage, the entire bulk of the storage material can be used rather than just its surface. A hologram is a picture of a whole object, showing it in 3 dimensions. We've all seen cheap holographic images on credit cards and ID cards, where they help prevent copying. Far more impressive are large holograms that take the form of a ghostly 3D moving figure that you can walk around to see from all angles. Holograms were invented in 1947 but only perfected after the invention of the laser in 1960. Today, they're used in such technologies as compact disc players and checkout scanners, and holograms can be created of the inside of live internal organs to permit doctors to examine the organs in great detail. And soon televisions with hologram technology may enable us to watch in 3D. Holocene of, relating to, or being the present geologic epoch. As the Holocene epoch began, the glaciers were swiftly retreating, forests were taking over the bare land, and human beings were moving northward again in large numbers. To geologists, we live today in the Holocene epoch, the period that began about 10,000 years ago, at the end of the last ice age, when humans first began practicing agriculture. But what does Holocene have to do with whole? Well, in geological language, the Holocene epoch follows the Paleocene, remotely recent, the Eocene, early recent, the Oligocene, scarcely recent, the Miocene, less recent, the Pliocene, more recent, and the Pleistocene, most recent, epochs, so the Holocene is the wholly recent period of geological time. Holocaust, 1, usually capitalized, the mass slaughter of European civilians and especially Jews by the Nazis during World War II. 2. A thorough destruction involving extensive loss of life, especially through fire. Her parents had escaped the Holocaust in Poland by fleeing into the forest and surviving there with hundreds of others for 2 years. The Greek word holocaustos means burnt whole. For the early Jews who followed the laws given in the first books of the Bible, a holocaust was a sacrifice to God, the burning on an altar of a lamb, goat, or young bull. The word is used about 200 times in the traditional Greek version of the Old Testament, though it rarely appears in English translations. In the 1700s, Holocaust began to be used to refer to the mass destruction of life. But no mass murder in Western history ever approached the scale achieved by the Nazis. As many as 6 million Jews may have died at their hands. When the slaughter of non-Jews is included, the number of murdered victims may have amounted to over 15 million. Retro means back, backward, or behind in Latin. Retro in English is generally a prefix, but has also become a word in its own right, usually used to describe old styles or fashions. Retroactive, intended to apply or take effect at a date in the past. The fact that the tax hike was retroactive annoyed the public the most. We normally think of time as constantly moving forward. Since retroactive seems to defy time's forward movement, retroactive taxes, laws, and regulations are often seen as particularly obnoxious and unfair. See also ex post facto. But nobody ever objects to receiving a retroactive raise at work. When we judge historical people and events in terms of present-day morality and attitudes, our retroactive judgments may indicate that we're too impressed with ourselves and ignorant of history. Retrofit to furnish something with new or modified parts or equipment that was optional or unavailable at the time of manufacture. The office building has been retrofitted with air conditioning, but the result has been a mixed success. The concept of retrofitting became an urgent necessity during World War II, when weapons technology was advancing at an intense pace and planes and ships were becoming outdated even before their construction was complete, and the only solution was to retrofit the completed craft with the brand new technology. Retrofitting was revived on a massive scale during the energy crisis of the 1970s, when new features were added to millions of old houses to make them more energy efficient. Retrofitting is thus different from merely renovating, which may not involve any new technology at all. Retrogress, to return to an earlier and usually worse or more primitive state. According to the tests, the sophomores had actually retrogressed in the course of spring term. As you might guess, retrogress is the opposite of progress. Retrogression is usually an undesirable decline from a higher or advanced level. So, for instance, in difficult social situations an adolescent can retrogress to a childish level of maturity. And under the extreme conditions of total war, a whole society may retrogress to a primitive state. The increasing number of poor or homeless people has been seen as evidence of modern social retrogression, and the rise of loud, name-calling TV and radio personalities strikes many people as a sign of political retrogression.